So when my oldest friend Todd and I left for Greece, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. Sure, there'd be ruins and museums, but apart from that, what were we really going to experience? This is the story of our trip, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. We made it to our hostel in Athens around 4 p.m. on our first day, and being that we'd been cooped up on airplanes for the past 20 hours, we wanted to explore. And so we plotted out a trip to the National Archaeological Museum where we found plenty of cool knickknacks to call our day well spent. Statues of Zeus, Poseidon, and even some artifacts from the Battle of Thermopylae. But everything was exceptionally broken. So broken, in fact, that there were sections of the museum that felt unnecessary or otherwise useless. Little did we know this would become a recurring theme of our Athens adventure. We elected then to leave the museum and head back to our hostel. On the way, we found a ton of pigeons. No kidding, if you go to Athens and don't find pigeons, the world's likely ending. We captured some good shots on the way back, but all of this walking had made us hungry, and so we went out looking for food. We didn't know it then, but our day in Athens was about to take a turn for the better. We found this little plaza called Exarchia. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but we met two Spaniards who were going to the Grecian islands to help in the Syrian refugee crisis. Roberto, a teacher, was going indefinitely, and Guy for 2 weeks. I don't have much footage of these two or Exarchia, but I know we talked about the world and our place in it with Roberto and Guy for nearly 3 hours before deciding it was time to go home. While the museum earlier had left expectations of mediocrity in our mouths, we put our heads to sleep with high hopes for day 2. On the second day, we wasted no time in getting to the famed Acropolis. I understood that there'd be decay, and like an old comic book, I didn't want there to be much restoration. The beauty is in the history. But the Acropolis barely met half our expectation. Yes, indeed, it felt great to stand where giants of history stood, but like the museum the day before, everything was tattered. And the Acropolis as it stands can't decide whether it wants to be restored or remain decrepit. Cranes stand around the once great Parthenon like modern dinosaurs staring out across Athens, and the tourists flock to this spot en masse. If you're not taking a picture, you can be sure that you're in someone else's. This all sort of creates a feeling of, let's get moving, and so we did. With the Acropolis's mount feeling more like a checkmark for our trip, we then decided to look at the surrounding attractions. Next on our list was Dionysus's Theater. While still quite battered, the theater actually resembled that which it was, unlike the Parthenon and the Acropolis. And though I was yelled at for accidentally stepping past the rope barrier, I didn't sweat it because I found these amazing cats. Cats who, like Dionysus himself, were prepared to do nothing but relax and enjoy. That is, until the nice cat left and the mean one came along. He channeled Ares. Cats would be a recurring happy theme throughout my trip to Greece. Todd was not near as enthralled with the felines, but we continued to explore the big tourist sites throughout the rest of day 2. We came across the Temple of Hephaestus, great street music, some amazing artifacts, and even supposedly the very place where Socrates committed court-ordered suicide. And once again, Athens proved to be an atypically awesome place for those willing to step off the beaten path. With our feet wet and the jet lag finally beaten, we set out on day 3 with a plan. And the plan paid off. We took the metro to St. Thomas Square, where we were quickly assaulted by men selling seeds. And because we were assaulted by men selling seeds, we were assaulted by pigeons, and because we were assaulted by pigeons, that made Jacob very, very happy. Todd? Ambivalent at best. Nevertheless, I could feel we were off to a good start. We then went to the Grecian National Gardens, which truly blew us away. Great scenery, animals, plants, and a great way to escape the Athens heat in the middle of the day. What more could you ask for? And it's not just the heat these gardens provide an escape from. They are a quaint, humble getaway from the hordes of tourists that you've likely just witnessed at the Acropolis. We spent a good deal of time here, and after, we're on our way to the Pantheaic Stadium. But before we got there, we ran into an Equal Rights for Refugees protest, which reminded me for just a few moments of the larger problems in our world, and of our meeting with Guy and Roberto 2 nights prior. Anyways, the Panetheic Stadium was beautiful. Large swaths of it are unrestored and in excellent shape, at least as far as I can tell. And for its grandeur, it wasn't extremely trafficked. There were a number of people there, but the suffocating aspect of the Acropolis wasn't present. You can almost feel the presence of greatness in the air, knowing that the best of history competed in that very same area. I even managed to get my dreams of winning a race in the stadium crushed by this slimy crust from Britain. Look how smug he is. He thinks he's so much better than me. The rest of the day was spent seeing smaller locations, eating great food, and meeting amazing people. And so as night fell on day 3, our last one in Athens, we took stride in knowing that we had squeezed out every last drop of goodness the city had to offer. Most of day 4 was spent traveling to Santorini, but that didn't stop us from beelining straight for the beautiful, beautiful beaches. And side note, the sand on these beaches is amazing. It just doesn't stick to you. I can't explain it, just go. We met a couple of German folks on the beach and played some games with them. They directed us to an amazing, godlike 24-hour bakery, and we said our goodbyes before retiring to our hostel, food in hand. And it was here that we met some really great folks from across the globe who I'm glad to call my friends. And yes, those white things around his hat are exactly what you think they are, and I'm proud to say that I've partied with the Australians to the tune of The Land Down Under, and no one will ever be able to take that away from me. On the morning of day 5, we caught breakfast with our Australian friends, and unfortunately, they were leaving that afternoon, and because we wanted to get the most out of Santorini, we had to bid them adieu in order to start our day. And I had the wonderful idea for Todd and I to climb a mountain. Yeah, a fucking mountain. The trek up was pretty stellar, and we managed to get some great views and shots while on it. But that climb was exhausting, and every time we thought we were making progress, the summit just got further and further away. We got to the halfway point and gave up, but luckily the halfway point had ice cream, and it may have been the best ice cream I've ever had, and I don't even like vanilla. After we climbed our way back down, we wanted to wash off the dust and sweat at the beach, so we did. Once our stint at the beach was done, we rented some ATVs and booked it to one of the island's many picturesque towns in order to grab supper and watch the sunset. It's hard to explain just how pretty Santorini is, so I'll let these images do the talking. On day 6, we were headed to nearby island Mykonos via ferry for one more day of new settings and adventure. And because I'd been ditched for someone a bit prettier on the ferry, I did some exploring. I found a great spot to lay out and rest, and even managed to capture some interesting shots throughout the journey. And windy as it might have been, people watching is a fun time waster. In truth, before I knew it, we were in Mykonos and at our newest hostel. Todd and I elected to do different things in Mykonos, mostly because dancing and partying aren't quite my scene, but we both got what we wanted from the island. For me, it was sleep. After grabbing some food and finding a quiet spot to call my own for an hour or so, I decided to call it an early night and hit the hay. The next morning, I woke up fresh, got some food, and set out to get some last shots of the island before our early afternoon departure. Todd and I were reunited for our day of travel, and at the airport, I kid you not, we discovered a cat in the terminal. He let me pet him for all but 30 seconds before snapping at me and running away. But it wasn't long before we were back in Athens for one last night of exploring before leaving Greece for good. We found our way into a sketchy neighborhood where someone tried to sell us weed not 5 minutes into being there. Past that, someone pulled out a phone and I had to double take in order to make sure it wasn't a mugging in progress. But the final straw was an art piece we titled Watermelon. Once we saw that, it was time to turn around, find good food, and go to sleep. And we did, with nightmares. And so it was time for the bonus round on day 8. We had an 8-hour layover in Amsterdam, which reignited a sense of gumption in both Todd and myself. And I can tell you with assuredness, everything in Amsterdam is cleaner. The airport was functional. The metro line was easy to follow, unlike the Athens metro where I got a ticket and lost my ticket. And you can make it most places worth going by bicycle. Amsterdam took us by such swift surprise at multiple intervals that it was almost hard to fathom. It's a land between two worlds, and though just a few short hours by plane away from Greece, it felt immensely different. And because all we had was a simple layover, we did what Americans do: tourism. We went to the I Am Amsterdam letters and scrambled on top of them, narrowly missed winning flights and tickets to a big football game. Went to the Rijksmuseum where we saw real Van Gogh and Rembrandt works, witnessed some truly great street music, something I hadn't considered when reading up on Amsterdam. And we even went to the red light district, which was admittedly quite dead during the daylight hours, but a nice young gentleman did offer to assist me with my camera.
Hey, if you take a picture from me, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna fucking pull your camera in the water.
All in all, Amsterdam proved to be a stellar ending to our trip, and past that, it helped bring Todd and I back together, because in truth, we had grown a bit weary of one another by journey's end. But the journey was great, and the memories even better. I've been to both China and Japan in the past. I've even been to Canada, but my first European trip is hard to gauge. Everything about the experience is so different. The people, the heritage, the world. And while I went expecting history to be the beauty of Greece, it's really the people that made it truly wonderful. Greece sits at the center of the world, inviting everyone to come and join the party. Finding people you like in Greece is limited only by your earnestness in finding them.